The world got some shocking news in the spring of 1970. The Beatles had broken up. The following year, while John Lennon and Paul McCartney traded insults in the press, the quiet Beatle, George Harrison, spoke loudly with his actions, organizing 2 massive benefit concerts at Madison Square Garden to aid the people of Bangladesh.
Mr. Harrison, with all of the enormous problems in the world, how did you happen to choose this one to do something about?
Because I was asked by a friend if I'd help, that's all.
Bangladesh, Bangladesh, with so many people.
It's just one of the most important gigs in music history. And at a certain point, rock and roll had to grow up and take a little responsibility. And I think Bangladesh is that moment.
Look at you all, see the love that's sleeping.
If there had not been the concert for Bangladesh at Madison Square Garden, there would be no Live Aid or Band Aid or Farm Aid or all the great money-raising concerts for great causes that there are.
The concert for Bangladesh at Madison Square Garden was the realization of George Harrison and Ravi Shankar's dream to bring the plight of Bangladesh to the world's attention. At the time, the fledgling nation was the scene of an unimaginable refugee crisis. Political unrest and massive flooding had left millions in desperate need of food and water.
All that was very disturbing for me, and I was thinking of doing something to raise money to be helping these refugees. That was the main object. George came to Los Angeles and he saw my anguish.
Harrison said, I'll see what I can do. I'll make a few calls. And he planned it to be a small thing. He was kind of surprised, stunned, and delighted to find out that the people who returned his calls turned out to be all of the greats.
George Harrison was able to pull together an amazing group of people. Billy Preston and Eric Clapton, Leon Russell, Ringo Starr.
I told George I was coming when he was putting it together, and I was in Spain actually, and I remember it very clearly, and he was sort of backing off from making it a Beatle thing. I said, well, I'm coming anyway.
On the only day available on the Garden calendar, August 1st, 1971, George Harrison's all-star lineup sold out the arena for 2 shows.
None of the Beatles had been on stage in anything like this. So the idea that George Harrison was going to be leading a band at Madison Square Garden for a cause, I mean, it just swept people's imagination.
The thought of getting to see a Beatle, let alone 2 Beatles, let alone Eric Clapton, let alone Leon Russell, Bob Dylan, all of these people on one stage at one time was just unbelievable. And they're going to be at Madison Square Garden. That just sort of added to the grandeur of the whole event.
When the concert for Bangladesh began, the first performance fittingly came from Ravi Shankar.
The indie music's a little bit more serious than our music, and I appreciate if you could try and settle down and get into the indie music section.
There's that hilarious moment where he asks the audience to be quiet and to be respectful and to listen, and then they tune their instruments.
There was a tremendous clapping and ovation from the whole audience. So I immediately took the microphone and said,
if you appreciate the tuning so much, I hope you'll enjoy the playing more. Thank you.
While the concert for Bangladesh was an act of conscience, it also delivered an unforgettable series of musical moments.
When Harrison comes out on stage and the band starts playing Wah Wah, everybody is playing. Billy Preston's on organ, Leon Russell's on piano, Eric Clapton is on guitar, Ringo's up there on drums. There was a sense of everybody just doing their most for the cause, and because they were up on stage with George Harrison and didn't want to let him down.
Some of the strongest performances are some of the artists who are not as well remembered. Leon Russell is fantastic. And he just, burns his performance down totally. He's great. Billy Preston gives a fantastic performance.
One question remained unanswered. Would Bob Dylan, who had not performed live in 2 years, join the superstar lineup on the Garden stage?
Harrison described sitting in Madison Square Garden during, the rehearsals. On his guitar, he had written a set list, and he had Bob Dylan with a question mark, because he didn't know up until the very moment that he looked over to see Dylan standing in the wings that Dylan was going to come out and perform.
We thought that the place was just going to explode.
The answer is blowing in the wind.
It's the performance that convinced Dylan to go back out on the road a few years later.
The concert for Bangladesh raised $250,000 for UNICEF. And the subsequent release of the album and film were even more successful, raising over $15 million.
What was incredibly beautiful was the get-together of all those musicians.
Just like a woman.
So it was an exciting time.
And at the end of it, Harrison told me, that Dylan just embraced him and said, God, we should have done another show.
A friend came to me, sadness in his eye.
The Concert for Bangladesh idea started with one guy, Ravi Shankar. He picked up the phone, spoke to his friend George Harrison, who in turn collected his friends. It sent a signal that two guys could step up and do something that no one else had ever done before.
Help us save some lives.
This was the magic that happened in one single night.
Bangladesh, Bangladesh.
The name of Bangladesh became known all over the world. I never thought it could become such a big event. I'm really so proud that I was part of it. And thanks to George again, because without him it couldn't have been done.